G'day and welcome to another edition of the Aussie Ideas Man. Hopefully this will be quick. I've just combined the two videos that I've watched this morning. I don't want to say too much about them, and I've chopped them up a lot, particularly Taylosives. If you want to watch him rant, I recommend you watch both these videos, but I've left a lot of Taylosives out. It's just a rant. Anyway, I won't have much to say about these things. I've just selected a couple of bits, mostly the cretins. So here goes.
But through all this busyness, I finally had a chance to sit down and watch the entire live stream of the Aptera validation vehicle they refer to as Artemis, which is a really exciting development for the company because it's the first time they're combining a lot of the interior software and electronics with an actual drivable model that has a production motor, has a production battery pack, and I don't think people are truly appreciating it.
It's hard to appreciate them combining a couple of things, the things he's mentioned, when it's about their seventh or eighth fake prototype. Had it been a second or third prototype, it might have been something to appreciate.
The software that they wrote that allows that central control unit with a production display, by the way, maybe because they don't realize how difficult and expensive software engineering can be, I'm in favor of them continuing, even if it's small little milestones like, hey, we wrote the software that is necessary to get our zonal electronics working throughout the vehicle. The same software that's going to be in your Aptera, that's the code that they are finalizing and finishing now and ironing out the kinks for, making sure all of their production grade parts can work with that infotainment. That's important.
I'll have to look for and find and insert where Auntie said they're leaving the software till last. This is years and years ago. They're leaving the software till last because it's very easy to do. The rest of the machine is the tricky stuff, which flies in the face of what Motormouth is saying here.
And their vision system, which is incredibly important because they're such an aerodynamic vehicle. Side view mirrors are not really going to be that helpful on a vehicle like that, so making sure the blind spot cameras work reliably and consistently alongside the two backup cameras. Really cool that they have that, by the way.
Yeah, this is a strange thing because Artemis came out with a couple of little cameras and no side mirrors. Well, that's how it appeared. If there are side mirrors, they're too small to be of any use. So if this is what is supposed to be 100% what you're going to be getting, you're going to be getting something that is illegal unless the laws have changed and they haven't told us.
I'm also super excited to see them actually in production now with solar panels on customer delivered trailers. By the way, this is something going on a daily basis. It's not like Aptera just made one set of panels for their polydrop trailers. No, they are doing this actively on a daily basis, building them as quickly as they can and taking a profit on these deliveries. So Aptera is not a pre-revenue startup anymore.
I'd like him to qualify what he just said there. I don't think they're making many at all, and they're not making a profit on them. I don't think their setup costs have been anywhere near met. Just like they said about there being 6,000 before break even on the silly trike itself, there has to be a certain number in the thousands where the setup costs reach break even. So he's lying to us unless he can actually tell us that they're actually making a profit by providing evidence.
Sure, the solar panels probably aren't bringing in that much money compared to what the three-wheeler will eventually bring in, but they are leveraging and licensing out now this solar technology, which they're so passionate and so excited to bring to the world. And they mentioned on this live stream that they are actively talking with more suppliers and more potential partners for their solar technology as well. So
they have always said they're actively talking to other suppliers. The real problem is that it's all talk. And by now we should know that. He should know it by now. Talk's cheap.
When all of us in the community just get upset and start complaining that it's never going to happen or it's never going to exist, that doesn't necessarily help them try to get more big investors on board, which is why I think even though it's slow and even though that's frustrating, it's important to keep your eyes on the prize and maintain that enthusiasm as they are making more and more progress towards production.
I disagree with only permitting enthusiastic talk about something that is flailing so badly. The information to the world should be as accurate as possible. And to give only one-sided positive talk where there's a lot of negative things in place is cheating most of the world. He has a bad idea there.
And I hope I get to drive Artemis in the not too distant future. But thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly.
Hello everyone, it's Steve with Aptera Owners Club. So there was this video put out called Aptera, the world's most pathetic EV startup, by this channel called Wall Street Millennial. They shorts stocks. And so obviously this channel, or the people who run this channel, are market bears. They are kind of negative about everything, so that's kind of par for the course for them. So I don't want to spend too much time kind of debunking this. There's a lot of factual errors in this.
He doesn't want to debunk it because there's not much to debunk. This is the cretin, and by all means watch his whole video. I'm sure all the fanboys will. They're piling up all the platitudes in the comments already. But watch it with an eye to how much he says is wrong with this thing. He's made two little points and he hasn't proven them. And as he goes on, he doesn't prove anything other than the things he wants to say that are pretty much unrelated to debunking this video. So this video stands, and it stands as good advice.
It gets a lot of things kind of confused like AI does. It conflates the current fundraising round with the accelerator round. It conflates the first iteration of Aptera with the current iteration of Aptera. And it makes the big mistake of comparing the projected market size of Aptera and saying no one will buy it because it doesn't make sense compared to X, some other car. These people, they feel like everyone wants cars for the reason that they want cars. But that's not the case. Some people just like cars because of the way they look. Some people will spend $2 million on a Bugatti. Some people want a truck. Some people want a minivan. Some people want something that's super spaceship looking and futuristic looking and super duper efficient. And that's what people want. And there is a group of people that want that. And that's very clear. And there's actually the people that want that.
They didn't say much about it being pathetic because it wasn't the sort of car that most people would want. They are saying it's pathetic because of their track record in not being able to produce anything over a very long period of time, and yet promising to.
So anyways, the thing that I thought was interesting about this video is they showed this, and I thought I had seen everything about the Aptera, but I had not seen this before. And I'm like, where did this come from? Because this is talking about their timeline. And in their timeline, Aptera expected to deliver their first vehicle kind of mid-2021. And by end of 2023, they had planned on delivering 10,000 vehicles. And this, obviously, these timelines were grossly optimistic and were missed. But that's nothing new, right? We know that startups miss timelines, and everyone misses timelines.
The argument that it's nothing new is not debunking anything. It's actually supporting it. It's saying, yes, they've made a point, and that point happens all the time. That supports it. I've said this in the past. The cretin agrees with people and virtually confirms that their video is correct. And he's so simple that he doesn't even realize that most of the time he's just in agreement.
And what all these people that predict the downfall of Aptera and other EV startups basically reminds me of this, which is one of my favorite quotes. It's by Teddy Roosevelt, The Man in the Arena.
He's done this one in the past. And in fact, in this video, if you're familiar with the cretin's videos, you'll notice that it's a combination, half a dozen things that he's already done in the past. And this thing about people are bad people for being critics is erroneous in itself. I have debunked him in the past on that one. Film critics don't have to be actors or producers to be film critics. It's an inappropriate requirement. And it's ridiculous to think that everybody has had to been the CEOs of autocycle startup companies before they're allowed to speak.
And basically, this quote says, it's easy to sit back and make fun of the guy that's trying to do stuff. And sure, he's going to fail. Sure, it's going to be hard. And he probably fails most of the time, but at least he's trying. And the people who just sit back and do not try it for themselves and just point at the guy that's trying it and makes fun of them and basically armchair quarterbacks them. I mean, they're the really pathetic people.
When I criticise the silly trike, it's for the features that it has and the features that it doesn't have, and in particular, the features that are claimed to be there and are not. I'm not making fun. I'm giving a more realistic evaluation than what people are getting from the snake oil salesman. If you want to know how good a bank loan is, don't ask the bank that's giving the loan. Get a reviewer to tell you what it's like. They'll tell you what it's like in all honesty. And they're not making fun of it. They're just doing their job. It's presumptuous of him to think that just because somebody has negative comments that they're making fun of it. I've been doing it for 4 years and I like to make fun of a few things along the way. But in essence, my evaluations are real and important to people who are thinking of joining in, especially if it's joining in with their money.
So that's what that's what this channel is doing, and all the other people that are predicting. And if you predict that startups are going to fail, you are going to be right more than 90% of the time, because that's just the statistics of it. Most startups fail, so they can be smug and being right, but you're just playing the statistics. You're going to be right more than 95% of the time if you predict that a startup fails, and that's just across the board.
If a person says, I predict it's going to fail because 90% of them fail, then well and good. That's what he's talking about. But if a person says it's going to fail for certain reasons, and in general I'll just say because there are lots of reasons why it's not fit for purpose. It's taken 20 years and lots of iterations and a lot of dead time in between, but it's still not fit for purpose. It still has never been proven fit for purpose. That's the reason why we're saying it's failing. We're saying it's failing, A, on that point, and B, on the point that they can't get enough money. Neither of those is saying, oh, we just know that there's a 90% chance of failure. He's misdirecting when he puts that to people.
Anyways, you can cherry pick negative information about any company and make it seem really bad and just ignore all the good stuff, which is what happens on the internet a lot about lots of things. You can cherry pick the one side of the argument and just ignore the other side of the facts that support the other side of the argument and make a pretty compelling story that supports your side.
And I've said this about the cretin. He does cherry pick one side of the argument and ignores the other side. He ignores it so much that he blocks people from giving the other side of the argument, which is why I call him a cretin, and which is highly unethical. He ignores the other side of the argument most of the time. He's starting to come across and mention some of the other sides of the argument, but only to ultimately overpower them with his cherry-picked good sides. It's been his method for the last 4 years that I've known him. And the poor guy is only mentioning some of the negative sides of the argument because he is forced to. He's in a time and state now where he is forced to. If it wasn't for that, he wouldn't be doing it at all. He'd still be on selling the snake oil because that's what he wants to do. And he's doing it for the free ones that he's worried about not getting if they fold for a second time.
So, anyways, I went and looked up this thing and I found it. It is actually an investor presentation from July of 2020. And I kind of debated going through it with you guys because obviously the timelines in this presentation have been missed, and that seems bad. But I just want to put it in some perspective. Like, remember I made this video about Elon's missed timelines. Missing timelines and missing timelines by years is nothing new. It's just happens everywhere. So I wanted you guys to just keep that in mind as we go over this presentation, because I think it's interesting.
Now, I've told him about this in the past too, and he never listens. There is no putting anything in perspective by comparing with anybody external to the company itself. If we were going to do that, we would also add the 90% of failures, complete failures, in the mix. They would be part of the perspective. So it's not just that Elon Musk and other people are slow to make it. We should be including those who never make it. That's the perspective. But the right thing to do is not even make comparisons with either group, the ones that don't make it and the ones that are slow to make it. Don't even compare. I've told him that and he just doesn't learn. This is a man that can't learn.
It's kind of a look back. So this is the investor presentation of July 2020. So this is, obviously the first rendering of Aptera. Things have changed a little bit. There's the little foam things here, and we have the side view mirrors that need to happen. And then there's a center light that needed to happen. These lights have disappeared. So anyway, half the cost to build, 3 times more efficient, safe and reliable. They're talking about how Aptera's platform has lower manufacturing costs, rapid and inexpensive scaling because it's modular, reduced part count, less labor, less space. This was their timeline. By now they were, this is obviously grossly optimistic. They were thinking they were going to have a sedan in 2021 and a crossover in 2022, semi in 2023. We're still waiting on the Roadster. But these things are still true, right? Lower cost to build. This was their original honeycomb fiberglass design, and it had 4 components. And then they moved over to a BINC, presumably because they had so much interest and so many pre-orders that they felt like this was not going to be fast enough, doing this with a jig.
Presumably because they had so much interest and so many pre-orders. This is nonsense. They made it so that you could pay only $70 for a pre-order, sometimes $100, but no more than that. You were a fool if you actually paid $100. But in any case, they made it so low that they got a large number of pre-orders. At that time, they had hardly anything in investments, but the pre-orders artificially boosted the money coming in from investments. It was part of the scheme. And if they wanted to ramp up production, there was no need to go to BINC, especially to go halfway around the world for it, and to make these few key components into a much more complex system with metal frames and roll bars and all sorts of internal and external skins. There was no need for that. All they had to do was get fiberglass fabricators within easy range of Carlsbad to supply the bodies. Just outsource it to as many fabricators as needed to meet their production speeds. That was the intelligent way to go about it. So I believe that looking for CPC in Milan, Italy, was just another way of stalling and possibly another way of making money disappear because it's going so far away from home. The money, that is. I can't prove anything, but that's my opinion.
And so they thought they could deliver 1,000 vehicles per year using the honeycomb design. So I don't know if they thought that they needed to have an even higher production rate than 10,000 a year, which I don't think they need, or if they realized that this 10,000 a year production rate with the honeycomb design was not feasible. I would be very interested to hear from Steve and Chris about why they thought this timeline was feasible at the time and why they thought that $25 million would be enough to go into production. Because clearly we've raised more than $25 million and we're past this timeline and we have yet to deliver a vehicle. So there must have been a lot of unknowns that got us.
I added this bit in because I don't think he's going to deliver on getting any answers from Steve and Chris. We will soon see, I suppose.
So Aptera has had to deal with a lot. And I think, they're doing the best they can. Now, could they have done it better? I mean, probably. I don't know.
Doing their best doesn't debunk anything on this video he's reviewing.
I'd be very interested to hear from the leadership why they thought that this was a realistic timeline and why they thought that they would get to production with $25 million at that time. Okay. Yeah. The design has changed a little bit and it looks better in my opinion. And I think that the carbon fiber hub and stuff which honestly looks very similar. If you look at this, the big carbon fiber tub looks very similar to their fiberglass design. I mean, if you look at this, this tub right here looks very similar. Now there's several more parts because there's like an inner and outer fiberglass, fiberglass for the outside and carbon fiber for the inside, structural parts. But this design looks very, very similar to the carbon fiber. And the carbon fiber has been really good.
He's saying the design has changed a little bit. Then he says it looks similar. In the end, he ends up saying it's changed a lot. Go figure.
I do, the in-wheel motors I thought was really cool. They moved away from that. But, going with a trusted powertrain is probably a good move in the long run. And so a lot of things have changed. And I think...
Keep in mind that the article he's reviewing isn't debunked because the design looks similar, or even if the design looks different. Neither is relevant because the article never claimed that they were useless for either of those reasons.
This video, unfortunately, got a lot of views, 66,000, but it's just not a very factually correct video about Aptera.
Yet he hasn't corrected anything that he regards as factually incorrect.
But what was interesting is, I hadn't seen this before. And the reason I realized I hadn't seen this before is because that investor presentation happened after I started this channel. And so I wasn't keeping up on Aptera as much before I started this channel. So I kind of missed that investor webinar. But you can track it down on the internet. It's the July 2020 investor presentation. And I thought it was a pretty interesting run down memory lane. I hope to ask Chris and Steve about it and see what their answers were, like what changed from 2020 until now that made these timelines different and the funding goals different.
That's the third time he's mentioned that he hopes to ask Chris and Steve about it. So he must be serious about that. Let's see what comes of it.
All right. Thanks for watching, guys. Tell me what you think.
I think, and it's got nothing to do with anything that he said, is while I'm looking at that little picture under milestones, I'm either getting an optical illusion or those wheels are facing outwards. When you look at the third last dot point in bold text, it says production increased to 10,000 per year run rate. That's in the first quarter of 2022. So they're making 10,000 a year, and it's in the third quarter of 2023, almost 2 years later, that they actually deliver some. They must have made nearly 20,000 before they delivered 10,000. And where are they going to store those other thousands that they've got already made, fully built? But anyway, ignore the next dot point where they're designing all those new ones that have never occurred, and go to the last dot point, and the text under there says new variant beta delivery started. So the beta, that was supposed to be never even made for sale and never even made completed. It was the test mule, the one that they were supposed to have 6 to 12 made and only ever made one that moved and registered it for test drives. I always thought in their early planning stages it was a Delta that was the one for sale. Even the Gamma was pre-production, and the Gamma came between Beta and Delta. So it's all a dog's breakfast. The whole thing. It's nonsense.
Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I do read every single one of them, though I obviously don't respond to most of them. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day.
Well, that's all from me. Bye for now. Stay safe.